last week, yeah, we talked about the avatar.
Well,
And I
last week we
said,
talked about
oh,
last week we went through all this stuff.
yes.
This
Last
this
week,
week is the
my
Avatar.
job was to write some stuff down about the avatar for Arvo. That's what
Yeah.
where I was in my head.
Okay. Cool. So yeah. So maybe I'll just recap some stuff
Hmm.
and talk about sort of various bits and pieces. So the Avatar itself. So if you remember the overall game, we're talking about the player experience being the focus here. The Avatar, game characters, game world. We covered all that. Looked at that last week. And then, so yeah, we've got the Avatar here. So the player has a relationship with the Avatar. And if we remember correctly, it's kind of interesting to go into this. So an Avatar is a digital character or representation that the player controls within the game world, serves as the player's identity, allows them to interact with the environment, complete objectives, and experience the story from a personal perspective. And also, avatars can be highly customizable, reflecting the player's choice in appearance, abilities, and even personality. So we went through that stuff. Um, so also, now you're all good with that. Yeah, that's kind of just repeated from last week. If you've got
Yep.
questions, just stop me and ask.
Hmm.
So like the game itself, there's we sort of break the relationship into personal relationship and functional relationship with the avatar. And so we can kind of see here we've got same sort of thing. So we have a personal relationship, emotion, mind, mental state, meaningfulness, social interaction. Functional relationship focuses on input and output. We'll talk a little bit more about that, what that kind of means. And then the avatar, the avatar attributes. This time, sort of genre and theme we've already kind of like defined in the sort of level above. So if you kind of you can think of it sort of hierarchically, the game is the sort of level above, and we've talked about that. We talked about the genre, the theme, etc. We should have defined that sort of at this level, I guess. I would say. So that's still important when we come and talk about the avatar. And obviously, the genre and the theme are going to impact a lot of things, but the focus is really going to be the art and the story. So that'll make sense.
Yeah, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is like if the genre is encompassing the fact that it's a first person shooter,
Yeah,
then it's obvious that the avatar will be a first person perspective. You kind of there's not any wiggle room there. Whereas the art and the story, that's where there's a lot to think about
yeah,
in relation to the avatar. Cool.
yeah, yeah. So let me just show you an example. I think probably need to go into this. So this is so look at this. So this is kind of where we're wanting to be at. So if I give you, if we have a look, the first level. So this is Silent Hills PT. This is a little bit different because this is an analysis of a game, but it's the same format. So essentially, we've got our brief description. So this is the top level. So this is the brief description of the game, actors and components. We do talk about the avatar, but we're going into more details. So you'd have this sort of thing at the top level, a little bit on the story, aesthetics, actor relationships here as well, etc. So once we've kind of defined that, we can then go down to the next level. So we're kind of assuming everything, we've got all this from the top level, but then we're going into more detail with the avatar here. So again, we've got the description and so I might, well, hang on, I'll come back to this. So let's have a look at representation as well, which is really important. Head bob. Got a video there that I actually put together as that's interesting. It's resized. That I based that on. The avatar height and size. So things like that. You ever think about that? When you're defining an avatar, how big are they? Like you don't necessarily think about that off the cuff. Oral or sound, representation. So, and then down here is also interactions, player input. I mean, kind of simple stuff, but of course you need to define these sort of things when if you're asking coders to create this stuff, you want to have all this there. Then there's also the output, the HUD, in-game menu, etc., audio output, and then relationships. So I just want to give you... Now again, this is from an analysis, but this is still the sort of thing you'd kind of want to have ultimately. So let me just... The description here. So the game is in first person, so the avatar is generally not seen when playing the game. There are two exceptions to this. The first is at the start of the game where the avatar lifts himself up off the floor and the player can see his leather-clad arms and hands. The second is when the player is in the bathroom and can see the avatar's reflection in the badly scratched mirror. Both sightings give the player the impression of a distinctly male character clad in a well-worn leather jacket. Perhaps the type of man who would look at home astride a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. The heavy footsteps that can be heard when the avatar is walking help reinforce this image. The avatar never speaks, and there are no specific atmospheric sounds or music that represent him. Because the game is about a husband who murders his family, the persona of our avatar is important to the story and how the player potentially connects to it. If the avatar was female or a child, for instance, it could completely change our relationship to the game. The slow movement of the avatar encourages exploration and observation of the game world, which is heavily story and atmosphere driven with simple puzzles. There's no HUD on the screen, which provides the player with a clear window into the world through the eyes of the avatar. Apart from moving and looking around, the only way to interact is with the zoom function, which is simple and surprisingly effective. Zoom can be used at any time by holding down the right-hand mouse button. If the player zooms in on an object such as a piece of the photo, piece they need to find, it triggers an action. The game is fairly low-key regarding objects that can be interacted with. So, yeah, that kind of gives you an idea of the sort of thing that we want to come up with. And things also here, so there's some interesting stuff in. Again, this is an analysis, but I think analysing games, I would certainly encourage any game designers to play as many games as you can, but play them intentionally and actually analyse them if possible. So for instance, you wouldn't notice this unless you're really looking at it, but you've got here that the avatar has a slight lilt when walking through the game world. Looking at it closely, it feels like the character is tilting slightly from the hips at each step. Unusual but quite effective for this character. Maybe that is designed to give a lumbering quality to the avatar. So it's subtle, so it doesn't create the nausea of experience in other games. So I really dislike head bob. I tend to turn it off in games that I play, such as Unreal Tournament. Also notice the camera moves slightly when the avatar is standing still. So this is another really interesting thing, to look at. The actual camera is moving even when your avatar is standing still. So yeah, why, how, what does that mean? So reminding me of the movement you can see in games like PUBG when you're aiming at a scope. Again, this is very effective and something I might use. Could be that radius, use the camera shake component to achieve this. So that's within the Unreal Engine. So that's an example. Got any comments or questions, observations?
Only that in preparation for the stream, when I was typing up some of our thoughts on our avatar for Arvo, I was using this as sort of a template, and
excellent, well done. Good.
Yeah,
good.
And just like you said, things like the head bob and the slight movement. I think we talked about it when we played through PT, but
we may well have, yeah.
Yeah, just those little things making really, I guess, like subconscious impacts on the player, but that do a lot to flavor or sort of theme any sort of interaction and the player experience.
Yep. Cool. Excellent. All right. Cool. So you're well prepared by the sound of it. That's really good. So let me just
moderately had to find that motivation.
Well, okay. Well, we need to get you motivated. Strong coffee sometimes helps. So there's an example. So the avatar attributes, we've got genre, Again, these ones not the core ones, although they certainly do impact. The art, or the story number one, I'd say, well, okay, there's different ways to design an avatar and different ways to design characters. You can have art-driven design, which is absolutely fine, or story-driven design. So depending which one you have, might sort of change some of these things. But generally, I've got story here. What I'd kind of recommend, if you've got your story set down, then you want a detailed character sheet sort of answering the sort of following questions. So who is the player? Who is the player character? Who are they in the game? And that might be a fairly complicated question, particularly if you've got multiple options for your avatar. What's their character arc? So if you're familiar with any screenwriting stuff, characters go through an arc. They start at a particular place, they go on a journey, they change, and then they end up and usually sort of come back to the same place. I'm not going through sort of the narrative theory here, but that's kind of the way that it goes. So what's the character arc of the player? So the player themselves, are they going through some sort of arc? So how do they change throughout the story of the game? What do they look like? This is a very good question. We sort of spoke about some of this last week. And what are their main personality traits? So you want to sort of have all these things, or more. The more you have, like if you hand this to your artist and say, "Hey, I want some do me some character sheets that might fit this," then you've got something to give them immediately. And the representation, and we did talk about this last week. Does the avatar have a character model? So the easiest answer for first person is no, because that's the least amount of work. The next one though is, does the avatar speak and or make sounds? So making sound can be very effective to set the theme and everything. And then of course, having your concept art. So being able to give, like I was saying before, give an artist a detailed character sheet and say, hey, come up with some concept art of the character for me. And then that's kind of what you get. So effectively, if you just go back where we were, so look at the avatar here. So effectively the same kind of thing. Now so I've gone through and talking about this. So the player is playing actually as a little boy. The avatar must reflect this identity. So that's a really important part of it. Nowhere in the game do they realise, are they explicitly told that's the case. But when I've done tests, the players quite often pick that up, which is kind of interesting. So you've got all the information down here as well. So movement, etc., etc. Camera, where the camera is going to be, how high off the ground, field of view. So there's all sorts of stuff down here. I mean, at this point, we're wanting to keep it pretty high level, but eventually you want to go down to that detail. So there you go. That's the sort of stuff. So I guess we'll talk about today.
I've got an interesting thought off that because I finished Yakuza Kiwami a couple days ago, and so I just keep thinking about it, unsurprisingly. But I'm thinking about Kiryu, the avatar, the player character. One of his defining traits is sort of having this really strong moral compass and sticking to it. And I don't remember the video. I saw a YouTube video. I think it was just on for a couple minutes, but they were sort of asking why Yakuza sort of has this one relationship with the player compared to a game like GTA where it has another one. Sort of saying, in GTA, people will just go and run over pedestrians and, there's no consequences. That's the fun of GTA. But in Yakuza, you don't get those sort of things happening. And they were arguing that based on the gameplay of Yakuza, which limits you to only being able to fight bad people, big air quotes, what, Kiryu deems morally bad, so whether that's like other Yakuza people, gangsters and thugs and that sort of stuff, the gameplay limits you to only interacting within his sort of the character's moral framework. And I thought that was a really interesting. I know we sort of said story and art are sort of the defining features for the avatar. But I thought there was an interesting way in which the gameplay can help reinforce that.
Oh, I think. Well, I mean, I think that would be part of the story. I
Yeah,
mean, you would define. I think who is the player character. So I haven't. Obviously, I can't cover everything in here, but their moral framework for sure is a very important part of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the way though that the gameplay limits you from acting out
Mm,
of that.
yeah,
And because we talked about it the other week,
yeah.
when the game lets you act in a way that doesn't align with the avatar, you see that cognitive, not cognitive, the ludonarrative dissonance.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And yeah, I
So
think that's
So effectively, that stuff impacts the functional relationship. You're prevented from doing certain things.
yeah.
Is that correct? So you can't kill innocents, if you like.
You can't kill anyone technically because that
Can't kill
goes
anyone.
against his sort of code. So
Uh-huh.
everyone you fight, they always just end up sort of either writhing around on the floor or they run away. You beat them up enough to
Oh,
make them
okay.
stay.
Okay. So you never kill anyone.
Yeah, and then yes,
Interesting.
also you can't fight regular sort of civilians on the street.
Right.
You only fight like you can't just start attacking. You'll have a group of guys run up to you,
Mm-hmm.
and they're we're Yakuza, we're going to beat you up, and
Mm-hmm.
then you go into a fight where you can only interact with them, and then you complete the fight and they run away. So yeah,
Okay. Interesting. Yes. So I guess that does make me think of another game from quite a while ago now, Aliens versus Predator, where you get to actually play as an alien, and this quite disturbed me when I played this game. This is probably 2012, maybe. And when you're playing as an alien, the way you heal is by eating people. And not only that, but when you, particularly when you get bigger, so you start off as like a little, you run around, you're this little tiny little thing. But then you get big enough to eat, to eat people. And you're there, and the person is crouching down, huddling down in front of you saying, "Oh, Jesus, oh God, oh, please don't kill me," sort of thing. And you're supposed to just kill them. And that's how you get your health back. I mean, I did not enjoy that aspect of that game. It was it was very, there's some real moral dissonance, I might say, in that. It was quite a challenge.
yeah.
That one. Yeah, so I haven't seen that much since that sort of thing where you're just expected to kill people, thankfully. There's not that many games around like that anymore.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm racking my brain. I can't think of any.
Yeah. Manhunt. Anyway, should we jump into the whiteboard?